Hi everyone, Megan here from Beguiled by Books. Welcome back. Today I've got for you 5 alternative US history books in honor of July. Let's get started. One of the things I've tried to do in becoming an adult is understand the bias and the lens through which I was taught as a child. So I'm really working on trying to unlearn and relearn history and worldviews from a more authentic lens rather than through a traditionally imperialist white lens. And I have gone on this journey for quite a while, and it's a long one, and I'm still on it, and I will always be on it likely. But today I wanted to share 5 of my favorite books that I think are really great alternatives to traditional US history that we're taught, because they talk about things through a different lens. They have authors from a Native background and just a good overall shift in perspective from what a lot of folks in the United States were taught about US history. The first book that I am happy to share is one of the first US history books I read as an adult, and that is These Truths. And this is a big, thick book. There's a lot of meat in here, but it really covers a lot of the US history around the Revolutionary War and Declaration of Independence and how the foundation of the country started and the types of people who were involved. The author does a really fantastic job of digging into this very foundational moment of US history, obviously the founding of the country, and talks about all the players, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, those big names, but through a different type of lens than what we're traditionally getting an overview on in school. So These Truths, it's a really good one. I would highly recommend it if you're curious about more US history. Another book that I would absolutely recommend in the same vein as These Truths is An Indigenous People's History of the United States. I more recently read this book. I think I read it in 2023, and it's part of a series called Revisionist History. And what I love about this book focuses on the Native lens through which the United States was founded. So what happened in 1492 when Columbus discovered America, and what happened during the Revolutionary War, and the Native lands that were stolen from the people here, and how America was so easily colonized because the Native indigenous peoples had built critical infrastructure like roads and meeting places, and they had a lot of things that were already in place. And the author draws parallels to Africa and why the British and Dutch and French and others really struggled to colonize Africa, because those systems were different and those colonizers couldn't get their heads around it to really take full advantage. So it was a really fascinating read. It's one of those books that has stuck with me for a really long time. I would absolutely go back and read it again. And I would read other books in that revisionist history series. I just haven't yet. There are a lot of books out there, but this one was really great around US history. Another book that I would recommend is called Braiding Sweetgrass. I really love this book, and it's more of a memoir about the author, but what I love about this in the lens of US history is, again, it's that Native focus. The author is a member of an indigenous tribe in upstate New York, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and is also a botanist. So the intersection of those two worlds is really important for the author. So like I said, it's kind of like a memoir, because the author's exploring who she is through these two identities, but also it's great to see how the author talks about the connection to the land and what that means for her people, being not a member of that tribe and not a native person to the United States, not an indigenous person, or with indigenous ancestry. So it was a really fascinating way to absorb that information. And it's also just beautifully written and very compelling to read. And I loved it for a lot of other reasons, but it's really cool if you think about it through the lens of US history. Another book I would recommend for this alternative US history books is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. And there may be folks out there who don't want to read this book. It is 800 pages. I mean, it's no quick read by any means. Obama is not a fan of brevity, but it is very compelling. And it is a lot about his experience, his ancestry, growing up in Hawaii, moving to the Midwest, his political campaign. And if you can look at his story outside of a political sphere, but at the political system, it's a really interesting look to think about how presidents are elected, how senators are elected, how even mayors of large cities are elected, and the importance of local government and how that rolls up to, the federal level. It was really helpful to kind of go from micro to macro in that view and through one person's experience. It makes you wonder about a lot of other experiences that are occurring and how those backgrounds are driving the actions of politicians today. So really great view into that. I've heard there's going to be a part 2 to this book. If so, I will probably read it. I can't imagine how thick that book would be, but I will probably read it when it's out there because the story definitely felt complete but unfinished somehow. So quite curious to see how that goes. The last book I will leave you with today is going to be The Rediscovering of America. And I have not read this book, but I'm putting it on this list because I want to read this book. And it is written by another Indigenous person. So The Rediscovering of America, really looking at America through the lens that is not a traditional colonizer, white European male version of what happened and the events of how America was founded, and a lot of things got left out in our history. So the author goes into the things that got left out to talk about it and what it meant for the peoples who were already here, and really help people unlearn and relearn what America means and what America was like prior to 1492, prior to 1587, prior to 1608, when all these colonies began getting founded. So I'm really looking forward to reading that, and I hope you look forward to it as well. What other US history books have you read? Are you interested in reading? Is this even a topic that appeals to you? I would love to know. Please drop me your thoughts below. I'm always here to read them and see what you're reading. And as always, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hope you have a great day.